Do you believe your home is safe? That ghosts are just stories? That evil always leaves clues? Then listen carefully, because these 3 stories, all happening in forgotten villages and silent towns across the UK, remain unexplained to this day, and after you hear them, you might think twice before turning off the lights. Get ready. What you're about to hear may haunt you forever. Brackenmore, a tiny village in northern England, is the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and nothing new ever happens. Or at least, that used to be true. In 1984, a family from London moved into an old country house they had inherited, hoping for peace and fresh air for their 4-year-old son Jamie. But within days, something already felt off. Jamie refused to sleep in his room, claiming that the boy at the window kept watching him. His parents thought it was just his imagination until they started hearing footsteps running upstairs. While Jamie was downstairs with them, the house was unnaturally cold. The central heating worked everywhere, except in Jamie's bedroom, even after technicians checked it multiple times. Every morning, his toys were found arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. One night, his father decided to stay awake to prove Jamie was doing it himself. At exactly 3:12 a.m., he heard a faint giggle, a child's laugh, but wet and raspy. When he reached the room, the window was wide open. Jamie was sleeping soundly, but muddy. Child-sized footprints ran from the windowsill to the bed. Seeking answers, the parents went to the village hall. There, an elderly woman paled when she heard the house's name. "No one's lived there since little Robert drowned," she whispered. In 1959, a local boy had fallen into a well behind the house and was never found. The property had stood vacant ever since. Apparently, Jamie didn't have an imaginary friend. He was being visited by someone who never left. Things took a darker turn when Jamie began speaking in a voice that wasn't his own. Doctors suspected a dissociative disorder, but a recording his father made later, analyzed by experts, revealed something disturbing. The voice Jamie was using matched the voice of Robert, captured on an old-school cassette. Not similar, identical, same tone, same muffled laugh. The coincidence was impossible to ignore. On their final night in the house, the parents were woken by the most desperate scream they had ever heard. Jamie was in shock, eyes wide, trembling. He managed to say just one sentence: "He wants me to go with him." They left the house that very night, abandoning everything. The house remains empty to this day, the child's bedroom still fully decorated, as if waiting for Jamie's return. But at night, neighbors swear they hear 2 children laughing, and the sound of dripping water upstairs. Doctors recommended Jamie see a child psychiatrist in Leeds. During the session, while drawing, Jamie did something chilling. He drew a smiling boy beside a well, and his own body inside it, upside down. The therapist noted that Jamie entered a trance whenever asked about the boy in the window, and would mutter phrases like, "He drowns me because he misses me." The parents, horrified, decided to return to London, but the entity seemed unwilling to let them go. The day before the move, Jamie disappeared for 40 minutes while playing in the garden. When they found him, he was sitting beside the old well now, sealed with concrete, hand said. "Robert showed me the way underneath. He was soaked from head to toe, as if he'd emerged from the water, though it hadn't rained. He smelled of rot and sludge." The father had a panic attack on the spot. The mother vomited. They spent the night in a nearby hotel and returned the next day to collect their things. But when they arrived, the back door was wide open. Jamie's bed was unmade, with 2 small body-shaped impressions, side by side. On the wardrobe mirror, scrawled in a dark substance, was a sentence: "He came, now we're brothers." The police investigated it as a break-in, but found no signs of forced entry or evidence. Years later, Jamie grew up with only vague memories, but recurring nightmares of dark water, a well, and muffled laughter. At 22, during a trip to Scotland, he mysteriously vanished in a forest near a remote lake. His body was never found. The only clue left behind was his phone, resting on the car seat, camera still open, frozen on one final frame, a swollen-faced child, grinning, standing silently behind him, though no one else was around. Today, Brackenmore locals avoid walking past the old house. Some claim to hear toys clattering inside at night. Others say they've seen a wet boy walking along the road, always silent, always smiling. A local legend has formed. If you see two boys where there should only be one, run, because the well has already chosen the next. In 2012, a young artist named Eliza bought an antique mirror from a curio shop in Chesham Hollow, a quiet village in Buckinghamshire. The mirror, framed in dark wood with carved Victorian symbols, seemed perfect for her painting studio. But within days, Eliza noticed something was wrong. Her reflection didn't quite move in sync with her. Subtle delays, involuntary smiles, as if the mirror had a will of its own. One morning, she awoke to find red paint splattered around the mirror. She assumed it was just an accident, until she realized the paint was dripping inside the glass, sliding down the inner surface. The mirror was cold to the touch, but a handprint had appeared from the inside. That night, Eliza began dreaming of a woman in a dark dress and veil, murmuring softly in her ear, "You brought me back." Researching the mirror's history, Eliza discovered it had once belonged to a woman named Margaret Blackthorne, accused of murdering her own child in 1892 before vanishing without a trace. Her body was never found. Witnesses claimed she would sit for hours, staring into the same mirror, speaking to it in whispers. When Eliza confronted the shopkeeper, he simply said that mirror was never meant to be sold. Eliza's paintings began to change. Eyes appeared where there were none before. Dark veils over faces. Figures watching from windows she hadn't painted. In one canvas, a woman held a mirror, identical to Eliza's, and a pale figure seemed to be crawling out of it. She locked the mirror in the basement, but every night, it reappeared in her bedroom. Always clean, always reflecting. Something slightly off. In desperation, Eliza tried to destroy the mirror. She used an axe, acid, even fire. Nothing worked. The glass didn't crack. Instead, her reflection began to age. Deep wrinkles, hollow eyes, her skin sagging. But when she looked away from the mirror, she was still young. It was as if the mirror was feeding on her, stealing her life. Eliza's final recording, posted anonymously to an art forum. Just before her disappearance, was barely audible. "She wants out. Every time I look, she moves faster. I think tonight is the final switch." Eliza was never seen again. Weeks later, the mirror reappeared for sale in the same shop, and it said that if you stare into it long enough, you'll see a woman behind you, waiting to take your place. A few occult experts attempted to study the mirror after Eliza vanished. One of them, Marcus Delling, told reporters, "This isn't a mirror, it's a seal. It doesn't reflect, it watches." He attempted a containment ritual, but stopped halfway through, claiming to have watched himself die in the reflection, in grotesque, impossible detail. The mirror was locked in a lead box, but 3 days later, the box was empty. The mirror was gone. Rumors say the mirror resurfaces in different places, always finding its way into the hands of artists, photographers, or people obsessed with their image, and each one of them disappears. One of the last to report seeing it was a makeup artist from Manchester who posted online about a woman in the mirror testing her makeup before she did. 3 days later, her accounts were deactivated. Her family reported her missing. Some believe Margaret Blackthorne used the mirror as a kind of exchange portal, offering parts of herself to maintain youth and beauty, at the cost of her sanity. Old letters found in her home read, "The glass showed me what I am, without masks, and now, it decides when I may live." The mirror doesn't show the truth. They say, it shows what your soul fears most, until you start to believe it's real. Curiously, the mirror never records properly. Photos come out distorted, videos blur, or erase the image entirely. One photographer who tried capturing it in high definition claimed the camera picked up a second figure beside him, even though he was alone. A year later, he took his own life. He left only one note behind: "She watches me even when I close my eyes." Crowley Hill is a forgotten rise in Yorkshire, where, in the 19th century, there once stood an orphanage run by the church. Officially, it was a shelter for children orphaned by war, but old documents reveal it was home to purification rituals, religious practices led by fanatic nuns who believed pain was the only way to cleanse a child's sins. In 1889, a fire consumed the building. Almost every child died, locked inside the dormitories. No culprit was ever found. Since then, the hill has been known by one name: the Land of Screams. Decades later, in 2007, a group of YouTubers went to film the orphanage ruins in search of paranormal content. During the shoot, they began hearing children's voices murmuring psalms. When reviewing the footage, they noticed that, for fractions of a second, faces of children appeared in the charred walls. The video went viral, but the channel vanished months later. 2 of the team members went missing. They were never found again. In 2015, documentarian Emily Moore set out to investigate on her own. She camped for 3 nights on Crowley Hill. The first night, silence. The second, footsteps circling her tent. The third, she awoke with scratches on her legs and a note pinned to her backpack, written in childish handwriting. "They told me not to sleep." She recorded everything. But after the third night, Emily vanished for 72 hours. She was found deep in the forest, covered in dirt, with a porcelain doll tied to her neck. All she said was, "They never stopped praying." In the orphanage's sealed basement, Emily found a hidden diary beneath the rubble. It belonged to one of the nuns. Inside, it described a ritual called the Plea of Light. A child would be buried alive with a lit candle. If the flame lasted until the end, the soul would be purified. If it went out, the soul would be lost. The floor was marked with small, circular graves, still damp, and the air reeked of melted wax and burnt hair. After Emily's experience, explorers began avoiding the site. One lost hunter was later found in a state of shock, with bruises in the shape of rings around his neck and tiny finger marks on his shoulders. He kept repeating, "The prayer doesn't stop, the prayer doesn't stop." An archaeologist from the University of York found children's bones in crude graves beneath the site. In one, a candle was found perfectly intact, unused. Next to it, a handwritten message: "Please bury me." Aerial photographs show beams of light circling the hill on certain nights. Locals report seeing child-sized silhouettes walking in procession, candles in hand, always in silence. But when approached, they vanish. Some say if you light a candle in the ruins, you'll hear a voice behind you whispering, "Blow it out. It's not your time yet." Curiously, the church responsible for the orphanage lost all its records in an accidental fire in 1974. To this day, it refuses to comment publicly on Crowley Hill. The case was never officially reopened, but copies of the nun's diary still circulate in the deep web, shared by groups who believe the ritual continues and that someone is still lighting candles to keep the souls from escaping. What troubles the locals most is that the hill seems to repel technology. Drones freeze, flashlights fail, phones, when used on the hill, record sounds that weren't present: children laughing, Latin prayers, and muffled weeping from multiple voices. Some recordings repeatedly capture one chilling phrase, whispered over and over: "You didn't bury us." Today, Crowley Hill is lined with warning signs, not for landslides, not for wild animals, but because something there has never rested. And at night, if you stop and listen closely, you might hear a chorus of children praying. And if you're holding a lit candle, the safest thing you can do is blow it out before someone else does. It's not the fire that damns you, it's what it tries to extinguish. 3 stories, 3 places, 3 moments when reality cracked open and the darkness seeped through. The UK is known for its history, its quiet villages, its ancient traditions, but there are corners where silence itself is haunted. Brackenmore, Chesham Hollow, Crowley Hill. Maybe these aren't just stories. Maybe they are warnings. So tell me, do you really believe these are just tales? Are you sure? You're truly alone right now. If you've ever felt a presence watching, or heard whispers in the dark, share your experience below. And if you still have the courage to sleep tonight, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next nightmare.